Midnight magic spuklas. Jungkook secretly hands a I always choose you letter to Jimin. Lovaludla. Jimin's reaction makes fans melt. The clock struck 12, and the city outside shimmered under a blanket of midnight lights. Jungkook's heart pounded so violently, it seemed to echo against the walls of the quiet rooftop. He crouched behind the low railing, gripping a small envelope, the paper crumpled slightly in his fingers. His gaze flickered toward the figure leaning against the corner, bathed in soft neon glows, the one person whose presence made his chest ache and yet filled it with warmth. Jimin didn't notice him at first. His eyes were closed, lips parted slightly as if he were caught in a private melody, the cold wind teasing strands of his hair. The city's hum felt distant here, and for a moment, Jungkook almost thought the world had paused just for them. He swallowed, the letter shaking in his palm. Just give it, just give it. But fear rooted him in place. What if he was misreading everything? What if Jimin laughed, or worse, walked away? The thought was unbearable. His thumb grazed the edge of the envelope, tracing the delicate handwriting he had spent hours perfecting. I always choose you. Each word carried weight, a confession long buried beneath smiles, performances, and unspoken moments. Finally, summoning every ounce of courage, Jungkook stepped forward. Jimin, he called softly, voice almost swallowed by the wind. Jimin's eyes fluttered open, meeting his with surprise that quickly softened into curiosity. Jungkook's pulse raced, the silence stretching, electric, and terrifying. He held out the letter, his fingers brushing Jimin's hand just briefly, enough to send a spark up his arm. Jimin's brow furrowed as he took the envelope. There was a pause, a breath caught between heartbeats before he slowly opened it. His eyes scanned the words, each line igniting a soft warmth that spread across his chest. A shaky laugh escaped him, and then a quiet, choked sound, tears welling in the corners of his eyes. Cookie, you really feel this? He whispered, his voice trembling. Jungkook nodded, unable to speak, his throat tight. He watched as Jimin's lips curved into the kind of smile that could make stars seem dim, a smile that reached his eyes and made everything else fade. I always felt it too, Jimin murmured, pressing the letter to his chest, and then, impulsively, he reached for Jungkook. Their hands intertwined, fingers locking as if the world itself had condensed into this moment. The wind picked up, swirling around them, carrying with it the faint scent of city rain and the crispness of midnight. Jungkook's heart finally stilled, though it felt as though it would never stop racing. He could see every nuance in Jimin's expression, the vulnerability, the relief, the joy, and he realized that no letter, no confession, could ever fully capture what he felt in that instant. I've been waiting for this, Jimin admitted, voice barely above a whisper. For you, for this. He leaned closer, the warmth of his breath brushing against Jungkook's cheek. And I always will. Time seemed to dissolve around them. The city, the wind, even the distant fireworks from celebrations far below, they all faded into a blur. In the quiet intimacy of the rooftop, only the two of them existed, hearts synchronized, unspoken promises heavier than any spoken words. Jungkook finally let himself exhale, a shaky, trembling release, and for the first time he felt the weight of his fears lift entirely. Jimin's head rested lightly against his shoulder, fingers still entwined, and Jungkook could feel the pulse of his heartbeat against his own chest. There was a magic in the simplicity of it, a profound, quiet certainty that eclipsed all doubts. Midnight had brought them here, but it wasn't the hour that mattered, it was the choice. And in that choice, they had found each other. The city's glow seemed softer now, less overwhelming, as if it were celebrating alongside them. Jungkook tilted his head, letting his cheek brush Jimin's hair, inhaling the faint scent of him, a mix of mint and something uniquely, impossibly Jimin. I choose you, he whispered, voice steady this time, carrying more conviction than ever. I choose you too, Jimin replied, eyes closing again, a serene smile playing on his lips. And for a moment, nothing existed outside that rooftop, nothing outside the soft, incandescent bubble of their shared heartbeat, their secret, their midnight magic. The morning light filtered through the blinds, casting slanted golden stripes across the room, but Jungkook barely noticed. He sat on the edge of the bed, hands clasped together, mind replaying every detail of last night. The letter, Jimin's trembling hands. The way his smile had lit up the rooftop like fireworks. His heart still hammered in his chest, a chaotic drum of exhilaration and fear. Jimin entered the room quietly, holding a cup of coffee. The steam curled upward, catching the morning sunlight, creating an almost ethereal halo around him. He leaned against the doorframe, watching Jungkook with an intensity that made him shiver. "You've been sitting there, thinking too hard," Jimin said, voice low, teasing, but his eyes betrayed a vulnerability that made Jungkook's chest tighten. I can't stop thinking about last night," Jungkook admitted, his voice rough, barely above a whisper. "About you, about us." He finally met Jimin's gaze, searching for reassurance but finding something deeper, an unspoken question, a challenge, and a confession all at once. Jimin stepped closer, closing the space between them, the smell of his shampoo and something distinctly sweet enveloping Jungkook. "Do you really think you can handle this, Cookie?" Jimin asked, lips quirking into a half-smile, half-smirk that always made Jungkook's stomach flip. "Because once you step into it, there's no going back." "I don't care about going back," Jungkook said, voice firmer now, determination threading through the nerves. "I've waited too long. He stopped mid-sentence as Jimin's hand reached out, brushing his cheek. The touch was electric, a spark that seared through every rational thought he had left. Jimin leaned in, close enough for their breaths to mingle, close enough for the world outside to disappear completely. "Then prove it," he whispered, voice low, sultry, teasing. But there was heat in it, undeniable, that made Jungkook's knees weaken. Their lips barely met in a fleeting brush, a whisper of contact that left Jungkook gasping. Jimin pulled back, his eyes dark with a mix of amusement and challenge. "Patience is exactly my strength, you know," he murmured. "But maybe you can earn it." Jungkook swallowed hard, mind racing, heart on fire. I'll do whatever it takes," he said, voice shaky but full of conviction. "Just tell me what you want from me." Jimin's gaze softened, but there was still that glint of mischief. "Of testing boundaries. I want honesty, I want trust. I want you to let me in, completely." His fingers grazed Jungkook's collarbone, sending shivers down his spine. "No walls, no pretending, just us." Jungkook nodded, swallowing back the lump in his throat. I'm ready," he admitted, voice barely audible, yet filled with the weight of everything he'd held back. Jimin's hand traced the line of Jungkook's jaw, thumb brushing over his lower lip. "Then show me," he whispered. And with that, the intensity between them shifted, no longer just words or longing. They were testing each other, probing the boundaries of trust and desire, exploring the uncharted territory of what had always simmered beneath the surface. Hours later, they sat together in silence on the rooftop, the city sprawled beneath them like a glittering ocean. Jungkook's hand found Jimin, fingers lacing tightly, and Jimin leaned his head against his shoulder. The tension from earlier had dissolved into something deeper, something intimate yet fragile. But even as they shared the quiet, a pang of unease settled in Jungkook's chest. He remembered the text he had received earlier that morning, a shadow of a warning, unsigned, hinting at secrets that could unravel everything. He didn't want to scare Jimin, didn't want to ruin this fragile happiness, but the thought gnawed at him. "Is everything really okay?" Jimin asked suddenly, sensing the shift in his mood. His voice carried concern, that subtle fear of loss that always seemed to creep into his words. Jungkook hesitated, debating whether to tell him now or later. "There's something I need to check. Something from last night," he finally admitted, trying to keep his tone calm. "But it's nothing to worry about, I promise." Jimin's brow furrowed slightly, but he nodded, trusting Jungkook even as his heart fluttered with uncertainty. "Okay, but don't shut me out, Cookie. Not ever, you know that." "I know," Jungkook said, voice trembling slightly. "I won't." As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in streaks of orange and violet, neither of them noticed the shadow that lingered just beyond the rooftop, watching, waiting, holding secrets that could shatter the fragile bond they had just begun to explore. The day ended with laughter and touches, stolen glances, and whispered confessions. But beneath it all, tension simmered, a quiet promise that the magic of midnight was only the beginning, and the real storm was yet to come. The night had fallen heavier than usual, the city lights casting long, fractured shadows across the quiet streets. Jungkook walked briskly, the letter from earlier still tucked deep inside his jacket pocket, crumpled from nervous clenching. His thoughts were a storm. Jimin's smile, the warmth of his hand, and the lingering fear of what lurked beneath the surface. Every step echoed with the weight of anticipation and danger. Jimin was already waiting at the cafe where they had first met in secret months ago, an old, dimly lit place that smelled of coffee beans and aged wood. His fingers tapped impatiently on the table, eyes darting toward the door every few seconds. When Jungkook finally entered, breathless from hurrying, Jimin's lips parted in a mixture of relief and something else, something that made Jungkook's chest constrict. "You're late," Jimin said, voice teasing, but there was an edge, a tension that didn't belong in their playful banter. "Did you forget me already?" "I know," Jungkook stammered, sliding into the seat across from him. He tried to mask the nervous energy that made his fingers fidget against the letter. I had to make sure everything was okay first." Jimin leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes narrowing slightly. "Everything like what?" His tone was soft, almost vulnerable, yet threaded with suspicion. Jungkook exhaled sharply, then looked down at his hands. "There's someone who knows about us, or at least they think they do," he confessed, voice low, barely above a whisper. "I don't know what their intentions are, but I couldn't risk you finding out the wrong way." Jimin's eyes widened, the playful teasing replaced by a storm of emotions, fear, anger, and possessiveness. "Someone's trying to come between us." His hand found Jungkook, across the table, gripping tightly. "Who? Tell me who, Kookie." Jungkook shook his head. "Not yet. I'm still figuring it out. But Jimin, I don't want to lose you because of this. I need you to trust me, even if it scares you." Jimin's chest rose and fell rapidly as he tried to process the words. Then, without warning, he leaned across the table, pressing his forehead against Jungkook's. "I trust you, always," he whispered. The intimacy of it made Jungkook's knees feel weak, and for a fleeting moment, the tension melted into raw, searing desire. "Always," Jungkook repeated, almost incredulous, his voice trembling. "Even if it gets messy, even if it hurts." Jimin's lips curved into a smile, dangerous and tender at the same time. "Especially then, that's when it matters the most." The cafe felt impossibly small as the distance between them closed. Their hands intertwined, fingers tangling as if neither wanted to let go. Jungkook's thumb brushed against the back of Jimin's hand, sending a shiver up his spine. "I've wanted this, all of it," Jungkook admitted, voice rough with longing. "Every look, every touch, every secret we've kept. I can't pretend anymore." Jimin leaned closer, lips barely brushing Jungkook's ear. "Good, because I can't either." His breath was warm, intoxicating, and Jungkook felt it deep in his chest, lighting fires he hadn't known could burn so fiercely. They moved closer, bodies almost touching, a tension that made every heartbeat feel thunderous. The world outside, the city, the shadows, the unknown threats, faded into nothing. Jungkook's hands traveled to Jimin's hair, fingers threading through soft strands, while Jimin's arms wrapped around Jungkook's neck, pulling him nearer. "Do you even realize how much I've imagined this?" Jungkook whispered, voice low, ragged with desire. "Every single moment." Jimin's lips grazed Jungkook's, a soft, teasing brush before pulling back slightly. "Then let's not waste another second imagining." And with that, he kissed him fully, the world collapsing around them into heat, longing, and an ache so deep it left them breathless. They broke apart only for air, foreheads pressed together, hearts racing in sync. But just as the intimacy reached its peak, Jimin pulled back slightly, eyes clouded with tension. "Kookie, I want this, but I'm scared. What if someone finds out? What if?" Jungkook silenced him by pressing a finger to his lips. "No what ifs, only us, only this, only tonight." Jimin hesitated, then slowly nodded, the tremble in his hand betraying his inner conflict. "Only us," he echoed, voice soft, trembling. The night deepened, and so did their connection. Words were unnecessary now. Every touch, every brush of skin spoke volumes. Jungkook's fingers traced the line of Jimin's jaw, memorizing every curve, every subtle nuance. Jimin's hands roamed Jungkook's back, memorizing strength and vulnerability intertwined. Hours passed unnoticed, the cafe emptying around them until only the two remained, lost in the intensity of emotions neither could fully articulate. Finally, Jimin rested his head against Jungkook's shoulder, whispering, "I can't believe we're finally this close, after everything." Jungkook wrapped an arm around him, holding him tightly, breathing in the scent that had haunted his dreams. "I've never doubted, not even for a second," he admitted. "But tonight I know, I always choose you." Jimin lifted his head, eyes glistening with tears he refused to wipe away. "And I'll always choose you too, even if the world tries to tear us apart." They stayed like that, bound together by desire, fear, and unspoken promises, the city around them alive yet distant. But outside, a shadow moved quietly, observing, waiting. The storm of consequences, of secrets ready to erupt, was only beginning to stir, threatening to shatter the fragile bubble they had carved out for themselves. And deep in the night, Jungkook realized that passion and danger were inseparable now. To protect Jimin, to keep this, intact, he would have to confront not just external threats, but the demons within himself he had long avoided. The tension was no longer just desire. It was survival, love, and a test of trust that would demand everything he had. The rain fell in sheets, turning the city streets into rivers of shimmering reflections. Jungkook's shoes splashed through puddles as he hurried toward the studio, a sense of urgency gnawing at him like a restless animal. His phone buzzed constantly in his pocket, notifications piling up, yet he ignored them all. He needed to see Jimin, needed to be close to him, to confirm that last night wasn't a fleeting dream. When he arrived, the studio doors were slightly ajar, and inside, Jimin was there, alone, sitting on the edge of the piano, fingers brushing lightly over the keys. His expression was distant, unreadable, and it tore at Jungkook to see him like this. The air smelled faintly of rain mixed with the lingering sweetness of Jimin's cologne. "Jimin," Jungkook called softly, stepping inside. The floorboards creaked under his weight and Jimin flinched, turning toward him with a guarded look. "Hey, are you okay?" Jimin's lips pressed into a thin line and he shook his head slightly. "I don't know," he admitted, voice trembling. "Everything's moving so fast, Kookie. Last night it felt like magic, but now I'm scared. What if it all falls apart?" Jungkook closed the distance between them, placing a hand gently on Jimin's shoulder. "Nothing is going to fall apart," he said firmly, though the unease in his chest betrayed him. "I'll do whatever it takes. You and me, Jimin, that's all that matters." Jimin looked up at him, eyes glistening with unshed tears, and for a moment, Jungkook saw vulnerability laid bare in a way he had never allowed anyone to see. "But what about them?" Jimin whispered, glancing at the shadows in the corner of the room as if expecting someone or something to appear. "Who?" Jungkook asked, alarm rising in his chest. Jimin swallowed hard. "People who think they have the right to decide who we are, who can and can't be together. I can feel it, Kookie. They're watching, waiting, judging." Jungkook's grip tightened on Jimin's shoulder. "Then we ignore them," he said, voice low but commanding. "Because their opinions, their judgments, they don't matter. Not if we have each other." Jimin shook his head slightly, leaning into Jungkook's chest. "I want to believe that, but what if it gets worse? What if they try to hurt us?" The fear in Jimin's voice pierced Jungkook's heart. He crouched down to meet his eyes, cupping Jimin's face with both hands. "Then we fight, together, always together." For a moment, the tension broke, replaced by the electric heat of intimacy. Jimin's lips barely brushed Jungkook, in a soft, tentative kiss that spoke volumes of desire and fear intertwined. Jungkook's hands slid through Jimin's hair, tilting his head, deepening the kiss until it became desperate, hungry, a release of the tension that had been building for days. Jimin gasped against him, pulling back slightly, fingers gripping Jungkook's shirt. "Kookie, we should." His voice was shaky, torn between longing and caution. "I know," Jungkook whispered, forehead resting against his. "But I can't stop, not now, not ever." They moved closer again, bodies pressed together, the world outside disappearing into rain and shadows. Jungkook's lips trailed along Jimin's jaw, neck, collarbone, eliciting soft moans that made his chest swell with heat and possessiveness. Jimin's hands roamed Jungkook's back, pulling him impossibly closer, grounding them both in the intensity of the moment. Suddenly, the sound of the door sliding open broke the intimacy. Both of them froze. A shadow fell across the doorway, someone tall and indistinct, and the air snapped with tension. "So this is what you've been hiding," a voice said, low, accusatory. Jungkook spun, placing himself protectively in front of Jimin. "Who are you?" he demanded, heart hammering. The figure stepped forward into the dim light, someone from their past, someone who had always been jealous, always been waiting for a chance to interfere. "You know exactly who I am," the voice hissed, "and you have no idea what you've started." Jimin clutched Jungkook's arm, eyes wide with fear. "Kookie, what do we do?" Jungkook's jaw tightened. "We face it together." The stranger smirked, a chilling glint in their eyes. "Oh, I'm counting on that," they said, "because once I'm done, nothing will ever be the same." Rain splashed against the windows, wind howling like a warning as Jungkook and Jimin stood side by side, the warmth between them a stark contrast to the cold threat now looming over their love. Every heartbeat felt amplified, every touch electric. The passion they had shared moments ago was now tinged with urgency, danger, and the exhilarating fear of being exposed, of losing everything. Jimin leaned against Jungkook, whispering, "I don't care who it is, I'm not leaving your side." "I won't let them touch you," Jungkook promised, voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "No one will." And for the first time, they both realized that their love, as consuming and fragile as it was, had become something far bigger than themselves. It was a force that demanded courage, that demanded defiance, that demanded sacrifice. And in that stormy night, as rain lashed against the studio windows and shadows stretched like claws across the walls, Jungkook and Jimin held onto each other, ready to face whatever consequences, betrayals, or secrets might come next. Because the magic of midnight had awakened something unstoppable, and nothing could extinguish it now. The city skyline was barely visible through the thick sheets of rain, but inside Jungkook's apartment, the air was electric, heavy with anticipation and unsaid words. Jimin sat perched on the edge of the sofa, legs crossed, fingers fidgeting with the hem of his sweater. His eyes darted to the door every few seconds, reflecting both worry and a restless desire he couldn't hide. Jungkook entered silently, closing the door behind him with a soft click that seemed louder than usual. His gaze locked on Jimin immediately, a mix of longing and tension twisting in his chest. "You've been waiting?" he asked, voice low, teasing, but with a subtle undercurrent of concern. Jimin swallowed hard, biting his lip. "Not waiting, more like bracing myself," he admitted. "For what, I don't fully know, but something tells me tonight won't be simple." Jungkook closed the distance, hands sliding around Jimin's waist, pulling him close. The warmth of their bodies pressed together ignited a fire that neither could ignore. "Then we make it simple," Jungkook whispered, his lips brushing against Jimin's ear. "Just us, nothing else." Jimin shivered, tilting his head to meet Jungkook's gaze. "You say that, but we both know it won't be just us," he murmured, voice trembling with desire and fear. "There's always something." "Then we face it together," Jungkook replied, voice firm, confident, yet laced with raw emotion. His hands moved with certainty over Jimin's back, pulling him impossibly closer. "No one gets between us. No one, do you understand?" Jimin's eyes glistened, emotions swirling, fear, longing, trust, and desire all colliding. "I understand, Kookie," he whispered, and before either could think twice, their lips met. It was no longer tentative. It was urgent, desperate, a release of weeks of suppressed longing. Their bodies pressed together as if trying to fuse, hands exploring, teasing, and claiming. Jungkook's fingers traced the curve of Jimin's spine, eliciting soft moans that echoed in the room, fueling a hunger that seemed almost dangerous in its intensity. Jimin's hands clutched at Jungkook's shoulders, tugging him closer, his lips roaming over Jungkook's neck, leaving trails of fire in their wake. "Do you even realize how much I've imagined this?" Jungkook gasped, voice hoarse with need. Every second, every touch, every stolen moment. Jimin's reply was a soft moan, his forehead resting against Jungkook's shoulder. Then stop imagining and make it real. The words, breathless and urgent, sent a shiver down Jungkook's spine. They moved together with a rhythm that was equal parts passion and desperation, each touch carrying both intimacy and the thrill of forbidden secrecy. Jungkook's lips found Jimin's collarbone, nipping lightly, while Jimin's hands roamed Jungkook's back, fingers digging in, grounding them both in the rawness of the moment. Suddenly, the sound of a phone vibrating against the coffee table broke the intimacy. Both of them froze. Jungkook's hand hovered in midair, heart hammering, while Jimin's eyes widened in alarm. "Not now," Jimin whispered, voice strained. But Jungkook's phone buzzed again, insistent, impossible to ignore. He glanced at the screen, an unknown number flashing and a single chilling message. "You think you're safe? Think again. I see everything." Jimin's body stiffened, hands gripping Jungkook's shirt. "Cookie, what does that mean?" His voice was barely audible, tinged with panic. Jungkook's jaw tightened, a cold surge of fear cutting through the heat of the moment. "It's them. They're here, watching, threatening. They know about us," he admitted, voice low, dangerous. "And I promised I'd protect you. I won't let them hurt you." Jimin's eyes glistened, a mix of fear and trust. "Then we fight together," he whispered. "Always," Jungkook replied, pressing a kiss to Jimin's forehead. "No matter what." The room seemed to shrink around them, the storm outside mirroring the turmoil inside. Every heartbeat was amplified, every touch charged with a tension that was almost unbearable. They clung to each other, a lifeline against the uncertainty, the threat, the emotions that threatened to overwhelm them. Hours passed in a haze of whispered confessions, soft moans, and heated kisses, but the shadow of danger never left. Jungkook couldn't ignore the creeping dread, the unknown figure, the threat, the possibility of betrayal. Yet every time he looked at Jimin, every time their lips met or their hands touched, that fear was tempered by an unyielding determination. "I don't care what they do," Jimin whispered, voice trembling. "I won't let anyone take us away from me." Jungkook's lips hovered over Jimin's, eyes locking in a fierce promise. "Then they'll have to go through me first." And in that moment, the heat, the passion, the fear, and the desire all fused into something unstoppable. The night stretched endlessly, the storm outside raging in harmony with the fire between them, and Jungkook realized that whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever threats emerged, he and Jimin were inseparable. Their love, electric and dangerous, had become both shield and weapon, a force neither could deny and neither could control. And as the rain lashed against the windows and the city trembled beneath the storm, Jungkook and Jimin held on to each other, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it together, hearts blazing, unrelenting, unstoppable. The air inside the dimly lit apartment was thick with tension and unspoken truths. Jungkook paced the floor, fingers pressed against his forehead as if trying to will the storm outside, and the storm inside his chest, to calm. Rain hammered against the windows like a frantic drum, echoing the turmoil that churned between him and Jimin. Jimin sat on the edge of the sofa, legs pulled close, eyes flicking toward Jungkook with a mixture of longing and fear. "Cookie, you're worrying too much," he said softly, though the tremor in his voice betrayed his own anxiety. "We can't control everything." "I know," Jungkook said, stopping abruptly and turning to face him, eyes dark and intense. "But I can control you, Jimin, me, us, and I won't let anyone come between that." His hands clenched into fists at his sides, the fire in his chest mirrored in his gaze. Jimin's lips parted slightly, and he took a hesitant step closer. "I trust you, but I can't help feeling exposed, vulnerable, like someone waiting to shatter everything." Jungkook crossed the room in long strides, cupping Jimin's face in his hands. "Then let me protect you. Let me carry the weight so you don't have to. You don't have to be afraid, not while I'm here." Jimin shivered under his touch, the warmth of Jungkook's hands grounding him even as fear threatened to overtake him. "I don't want to hide anymore," he whispered, eyes glistening. "I don't want to be careful with how I feel." "You don't have to," Jungkook replied, voice low, heated, almost a growl. Not with me, I want you completely, every part of you. The intensity in Jungkook's tone sent a thrill through Jimin, and he let himself fall into the embrace, hands tangling in Jungkook's hair as their lips met in a kiss that was urgent, desperate, and raw. Every brush of skin, every whispered moan carried months of longing, secrecy, and the thrill of forbidden passion. I've waited for this, Jungkook gasped, lips brushing Jimin's jaw, neck, collarbone. Every second imagining you wanting you. Jimin pressed closer, breath hitching, lips trembling. Then stop imagining, make me yours, Kookie, he whispered, voice breaking between desire and fear. His hands roamed Jungkook's back, tugging him impossibly close, as if trying to fuse their bodies and hearts into one. Their movements became frantic, desperate, a storm matching the one outside. The room was filled with soft moans, whispered names, and the shivering heat of bodies pressed together. Every touch, every gasp, every heartbeat was a declaration, a promise, a defiance of the world outside. Suddenly, Jungkook's phone buzzed violently on the coffee table, breaking the fevered rhythm. Both froze, breaths ragged, and Jungkook shot a sharp glance at Jimin. "Not now," he muttered, voice rough with desire and tension. But curiosity, or fear, got the better of him. He grabbed the phone, and the screen lit up with a message from an unknown number. Asterisk, you think you can hide forever. The truth always comes out. Watch your back. Jimin's hands went to his mouth, eyes wide with panic. "They know," he whispered, voice trembling. "They know everything." Jungkook's jaw tightened. "Then we confront it," he said, tone deadly serious. "No more hiding, no more running, we face it together, always." Jimin's fingers dug into Jungkook's shirt, nails grazing skin. "I'm scared, Kookie, but I can't imagine being anywhere else." Jungkook cupped Jimin's cheek, thumb brushing away a stray tear. "You don't have to be anywhere else, just with me, always with me." He leaned in, capturing Jimin's lips again in a fierce, possessive kiss, tongues brushing, teeth grazing in heated play, bodies pressed together as if they were trying to merge completely. Hours passed in a blur of whispered confessions, desperate touches, and shivering embraces. Outside, the storm raged on, echoing the chaos of emotions that neither could suppress. Jimin's hands traced the planes of Jungkook's shoulders, chest, and back, memorizing every contour, while Jungkook's fingers roamed Jimin's hair, jaw, and spine, claiming every inch with both tenderness and intensity. "You're mine," Jungkook growled against Jimin's neck, voice ragged with need. "And I won't let anyone take you away from me." "I'm yours," Jimin whispered, shivering, lips grazing Jungkook's shoulder. "Always yours, even when it hurts, even when it scares me." A sudden crash of thunder shook the windows, and Jungkook held him tighter. "Then we don't let it break us," he said, heart hammering. "We're stronger than this, together." And in that dark, storm-lashed room, surrounded by shadows and the echoes of a world waiting to tear them apart, Jungkook and Jimin clung to each other, bodies entwined, hearts synchronized, a bond forged in fire, passion, and defiance. The night was theirs, fleeting and fragile, yet powerful enough to burn away every doubt, every fear, every shadow that threatened to separate them. They were unstoppable, together. The first light of dawn filtered through the rain-streaked windows, casting a soft glow over the apartment. The storm outside had calmed, but inside, the tension of the past night still hummed like a low, persistent heartbeat. Jungkook and Jimin lay entwined on the sofa, limbs tangled, foreheads pressed together, breaths mingling, hearts still racing from the intensity of the moments they had survived and created together. Jimin's fingers traced lazy circles along Jungkook's arm, eyes closed, as if memorizing every sensation. I thought we wouldn't make it," he whispered, voice hoarse, a mixture of relief and lingering fear. "I thought everything would fall apart and I'd lose you." Jungkook cupped his face, thumb brushing over his cheekbone. "I told you nothing can touch us. Not anymore. We've faced it all, Jimin. Every threat, every fear, every shadow that tried to come between us, we survived it. Together." Jimin opened his eyes, searching Jungkook's gaze, finding the unwavering certainty he needed. "Even the secrets?" he asked softly, fear and curiosity tangled in his tone. "Yes," Jungkook said firmly, pressing his lips to Jimin's forehead. Even the secrets, because there's nothing more important than this, than us. I'll never let anything take you away from me. A faint smile touched Jimin's lips, the kind of smile that made Jungkook's chest ache with longing and love. I always knew, I always felt it, but now it's real. You and me. No pretending, no hiding. Jungkook leaned in, capturing his lips in a slow, lingering kiss. It was different from before, not urgent, not desperate, but profound, tender, and consuming all at once. Their hands roamed freely, exploring and memorizing, a celebration of trust and passion, of love that had been tested and survived. I can't believe how much I need you, Jimin murmured against his lips, fingers digging into Jungkook's shoulders. I never want this to end. It won't, Jungkook replied, voice low, certain, possessive in the gentlest way. Because I choose you always, and I always will, no matter what. Jimin pressed closer, resting his head on Jungkook's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. And I choose you too, he whispered, voice trembling with emotion. Through everything, through the chaos, I choose you. For a long time, they simply held each other, the world outside fatting to nothing. The fear, the threats, the secrets, they had faced them all and come through stronger. The heat of their connection had survived the storms, both literal and metaphorical, and in its place remained a bond so powerful it needed no words to define it. Hours later, the city began to stir, unaware of the small, intimate revolution that had taken place in that quiet apartment. Jungkook and Jimin remained entwined, hands clasped, hearts beating in sync, eyes meeting in silent promises. They had discovered a truth deeper than desire, stronger than fear, and more enduring than any storm. That love, when chosen freely and fiercely, could withstand anything. Jungkook brushed a stray strand of hair from Jimin's face, smiling softly. This is us, he said, voice filled with awe and certainty. Nothing else matters, just this, just us. Jimin smiled back, tears glistening in his eyes but no longer of fear, now of relief, joy, and pure love. Just us, he echoed. And in that quiet morning light, after nights of passion, tension, and uncertainty, Jungkook and Jimin knew, truly knew, that no force in the world could undo what they had built. No shadow could dim the fire that burned between them, and no storm could ever separate the two hearts that had chosen each other, over and over again. The city outside moved on, but inside, in their little sanctuary of warmth, love, and trust, Jungkook and Jimin finally let themselves breathe, laugh, and live fully. Together, unbreakable, unstoppable, and endlessly devoted.